This is a session number 22 of MRCG Part 2 course, July 2021. And today we will be covering the topics of maternal medicine. The topics which we will cover today are Green Top Guideline number 68 of epilepsy in pregnancy, one of a very important guideline, a relatively newer guideline, and many questions come from this guideline. Then Green Top Guideline of breast cancer in pregnancy, it's a guideline number 12. Although it's an old guideline, but at least two questions definitely come from this guideline. It's a small guideline to cover, so we'll see what are the points to uh, remember as far as the exam is concerned. Then the next topic we'll cover is hypertension in pregnancy, and one of a very important article about headaches in pregnancy. It's a must question in the exam, which usually comes as an extended matching question. And then we'll be discussing about spinal cord injury in pregnancy. There was a dog article about it, and they do ask questions, and appendicitis in pregnancy. So let's begin with our first topic. It is Green Top Guideline number 68, epilepsy in pregnancy. Epilepsy prevalence during pregnancy is 0.5 to 1%. WWE means woman with epilepsy. 2,500 infants born to WWE, one third women with epilepsy are in the reproductive age. These are some important numbers, and you get straightforward single best question in the exam coming from these numbers. Risk of death in pregnancy is increased 10 times in pregnancy if a woman is epileptic, regardless of whether her fits are controlled, whether she's taking medicines or not. Epilepsy is a very big risk factor of death during pregnancy, and the most of the deaths they occur due to SUDEP. SUDEP stands for sudden unexpected death in pregnancy. There is 1 to 2% of risk of fit during pregnancy. Postpartum depression is around 29% in women who are epileptic. We did cover about the postpartum depression, but remember, if a woman is epileptic, the incidence is almost double. The one of a very important question which comes in the exam, because we know epileptic drugs are teratogenic. But important point to remember here is, even if a woman is not taking any drug for epilepsy, still there is 2.8% chance of anomalies in the baby. If one drug is taken, anomaly chance is 6%. If two drugs are taken, it's 15% risk of having anomalies. Now you see it's 2.8%, then 6%, and then 15%. And if three drugs are taken, the risk increases tremendously and it becomes 50%. You have to remember these numbers because they may ask this question in the exam as part of single best question, single best answer. Sodium valproate is the most teratogenic drug, I would say. It is associated with around 8% of anomalies and 4% autism. And this question has come in the exam, and usually sodium valproate is not prescribed in a woman of reproductive age due to its high teratogenicity. Just remember the fact all anti-epileptics are teratogenic. Some may be less teratogenic, some may be more teratogenic. So least risk of teratogenesis or teratogenesis is with carbamazepine or lamotrigine. So you can If the woman is epileptic, of course we have to give her medicines, and this is one of the conditions where you have to outweigh the risks and benefits. You have to measure the risks outweigh the benefits outweigh the risks. So carbamazepine and lamotrigine can be used during pregnancy. Along with high dose folic acid must be given. So folic acid is a recommended one in women who have epilepsy to prevent the neural tube defects. The highest risk is associated with sodium valproate, and with sodium valproate there is risk of autism and lower IQ and phenytoin. So whenever you get a question, you may get a question in the exam that which of the following is has the least risk or which of the following has the highest risk. So you should know which drugs you can give and which drugs you should not give, and choose it according to its toxicity and teratogenicity. 15% of women discontinue medicines during pregnancy. So as soon as they get to know that they are pregnant, they tend to discontinue the medicines due to the risk of teratogenicity. So here comes the part, preconception counseling. You have to counsel the woman, and if she is planned, because most of the time we know that epilepsy is usually present right from the childhood, even though there is adult onset epilepsy is also there. So when a woman is taking anti-epileptic drugs, or she is epileptic and she wants to become pregnant, she should have proper good antenatal preconception counseling. She should be in optimal condition to conceive. Her epilepsy should be controlled, fits should be under control, she should be taking folic acid, and she should be told that you should not continue your medications because that could be dangerous for her. She may is pregnant, but if she stops taking the medicine, she may have fitting during pregnancy. And then, as we said, pregnancy is anyway a high risk time for women who are epileptic. We can say some women that they are low risk. Low risk women are those women who are fit free for 10 years and in the last 5 years without anti-epileptic drugs. So you can see this is a very strict criteria. If I don't know if you have, if any of you have ever known a patient who is an epileptic patient, you would know that very rarely you would see someone free for seizures for 10 years and without anti-epileptic drugs, and the patient is taking no treatment. If the patient fits this criteria, that means she falls into the category of low risk and can be managed as low risk. Preconception, we should give 5 milligrams folic acid uh, for at least start it at least 3 months before conception and continue all throughout the pregnancy. So this is one thing which is different. So this point, please make it a point, because in other conditions, what do? We start the folic acid preconceptually and continue it till 12 weeks. But epilepsy is one of the conditions where you have to continue folic acid all through the pregnancy. She will continue taking it all throughout the pregnancy because she is at risk. So make a note, this is a different point. Okay, we have a question. Dr. Nazia, please try this question.
A 20 years old woman, a known epileptic, attends the medical antenatal clinic for preconception conception counseling. She has been seizure free for 2 years. Which of the following medication would you advise her against because of risk of congenital malformation? So it's sodium valproate.
Exactly. So out of all these medications, we know the phenytoin is also risky, but sodium valproate is the one which you should advise against it. The most if I said that, which of the following medications would you choose to give her during pregnancy out of this? Now I change the question.
So it's carbamazepine and
I-
lamotrigine.
Or lamotrigine or carbamazepine. Out of both of these, which one would you give her? if you have the choice, you will go for carbamazepine. Okay,
Okay.
so this is how you, whenever you are reading a question, read it one question and twist it the other way and see that how you can choose, because they may ask the question in another way. Okay, the next question, Shazia, please try the question.
You are following up a 22-week pregnant woman in the antenatal clinic. Her epileptic fits are well controlled on medication. What is the most common cause of maternal death secondary to epilepsy? It's E. Sudden
It's
unexpected.
E, sudden unexpected death in pregnancy. So we will define it what it is in the next slide. The diagnosis of epilepsy should be by the neurologist. This is clearly mentioned in the Green Top guideline. A neurologist must be involved. I mean, you as a gynecologist or an obstetrician are not going to make the diagnosis, must involve the neurologist, and accurate documentation is a must. It's a prerequisite before you reach a diagnosis. And then you have to, in the, what do you have to note in the document? What is the duration of the fits? What is the severity? What is the type? And what is the impact on the mother? Now I pause a little bit and tell you something which is a repetition. Whenever you are covering a topic in maternal medicine, you come across a medical condition, you have to know, because most of the time these medical conditions are chronic medical conditions. So you should know what is the effect of the condition on pregnancy, what is the effect of pregnancy on that condition, how the care for the mother is going to be different than the routine antenatal care, and how the care for mother for the child is going to be different than the uh, child who is born to a woman with low risk. So that's the important one. Yeah, Zebunisa is right. She's saying diagnosis by neurologist is a recall. Thank you, Zebunisa, for your input. Very valuable input. That is true. Actually, you will come across many recalls in this. Now, what is sudden unexpected death in pregnancy? Sudden, unexpected, witnessed or unwitnessed, non-traumatic and non-drowning death in women with epilepsy, with or without the evidence of fit, and excluding documented status epilepticus. Postmortem does not show toxicological or anatomical cause. So this is the comprehensive definition of SUDEP, because they may give this as a scenario. All you have to do is to pick what is the diagnosis or what is the type of the death. If they find a cause during the postpartum that is not going to be unexpected or undiagnosed, there should be no diagnosis. It should be unexpected. You should not know whether there is any cause or no. There should be no status epilepticus. Then only you will say it's a SUDEP. And please remember, if there you have a woman who has a fit during the second half of pregnancy and you are not sure about the diagnosis, the differential diagnosis of fits in pregnancy is eclampsia, eclampsia, and eclampsia. Only after ruling out, then only you will think, okay, this could be epilepsy. So until and unless you are not sure about the diagnosis, manage the patient on lines of eclampsia, because management of epileptic fits and management of eclampsia are different. If you are sure this fit is an epileptic fit, you will manage it on lines of epilepsy. If the diagnosis was clear, patient was diagnosed by the neurologist, you know she is epileptic. But if the patient comes with vague history, not confirmed diagnosis, your management choice would be to treat on the lines of eclampsia. I cannot emphasize more than that. And for that, what you will do, you will use magnesium sulfate until the definitive diagnosis is made, because that is the management of eclampsia. It is safe to do CT and MRI scan during pregnancy, and with MRI, just that we keep on saying, with contrast, gadolinium should be avoided during pregnancy. Otherwise, whenever you have an indication to do CT scan or MRI during pregnancy, you should do it, because pregnancy should not hinder you for making the diagnosis. Now, what are the differential diagnoses of cesarean pregnancy? As you can see, the first one is eclampsia. For me, it will come 3 times, and then epilepsy, then cerebral vascular thrombosis, post reversible leukoencephalopathy, reversible cerebral vasoconstriction syndrome. So you should be very clear what are the differential diagnosis. Okay, for the differential diagnosis, the best resource, because maternal medicine is one of a very extensive module, no matter how much you do, still there would be something lacking. The best source to study maternal medicine is the book book of obstetric medicine by Catherine Nelson Percy. It's a wonderful book. It's an excellent book. I know it's really extensive book. It is difficult for you guys to do it, difficult to go into the details, but at least you can do is to do the differential diagnosis of the tables given in that book. Please remind me in the WhatsApp. I'll share the differential diagnosis PDF with you in the WhatsApp group, so that you can at least go through those, and it will help you manage and solve the questions in the exams. Please, some of you do remind me. Okay. Most common major anomaly which is associated with epilepsy is neural tube defects, cardiac defects, urinary tract anomalies, and skeletal and cleft palate. So some medicines are associated with specific anomalies. So let's see what are those. Sodium valproate is associated with neural tube defects, facial cleft and hypospadiasis. Phenobarbital and phenytoin is associated with cardiac defects. Phenytoin and carbamazepine is associated with cleft palate. Now, what is the importance of remembering it like that? Because they may give you a question in the exam that the baby is born with hypospadiasis and the woman was epileptic. What's the most likely drug she was taking? Then the answer would be sodium valproate. Until and unless you know that this drug has this specific anomaly, you will not be able to reach the right answer. Then like the same way. So you have to remember these specific anomalies associated with the specific drugs. One of a very important question. A woman has one child with malformation. She is worried. She comes to the antenatal clinic. She is epileptic and she asks you, what is the risk of malformation of my second child? The incidence is 16%, almost 17%, 16.8 per 100. This is highlighted in yellow because it's a potential single best question. Important counseling point, because as I have told you, whenever we are covering a condition more than the incidence, RCOG is interested to know its recurrence, because that's more of a prevention. Once it happened, okay, it happened. So how can we counsel the women? It's her right to know what are the risks to her child. Another one, what is the risk of epilepsy in the baby if if mother is epileptic. The chance is 5%. If one child is epileptic, now please make a difference. Here I was saying risk of malformation. Don't confuse it with epilepsy inheritance. Malformation is something different. Having the epilepsy child epileptic is different. So if one child has epilepsy, the chance of second child having epilepsy is 10%. If both the parents, if the father and mother, they are epileptic, the chance of having a baby who will have epilepsy is 15 to 20%, because we know it has inheritance. Family history of epilepsy plays an important role. So these two things are very important to remember because they may be tested in the exam. Single best question or a part of a complex extended matching question where they will give you many percentages and they'll give you the scenario and you have to remember that. As I told you previously in the previous session, try to write down the conditions, especially these conditions are in maternal medicine. Write down its incidence, write down its recurrence and the risks like this. Risk to the baby. If one child has, then what is the risk of so and so condition? If mother has, if father has, if both parents have. We did it like this for the diabetes also. So it is the same thing. I have put a small box here for the epilepsy and I hope it's going to be helpful. Now, as I said that we should know what would be the effect of pregnancy on the epilepsy. 67% of women will not have a fit. So that means pregnancy is not going to deteriorate the fit for 67% of women. If a woman did not have a fit in previous 9 to 12 months, that means she was fit free for almost a year, 74 to 92% chance that she will not have fits during pregnancy. If a woman has idiopathic generalized fits, we know that there are different types of fits which we'll be looking at in the next slide. If the woman has idiopathic generalized types of fits, she is more likely to be fit free. That means she's more likely to be fit free. Almost 74% women would be fit free if they have idiopathic generalized fits. And women who have focal epilepsy, 60% would be fit free. So generalized epileptic women will have a chance that they are more likely to be fit free. This is the table which I have taken from the Green Top guideline, which is about the clinical presentation of various fits types and their effects on the mother and the baby. I'll just read the main names of the common types of epilepsy. You can read the clinical presentation, effects on the mother and the baby. You must remember this table by heart. There are main 4 types of epilepsy: tonic-clonic seizures, previously known as grand mal, absence seizures, juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, and focal seizures, previously defined as complex partial or simple partial. So this is a very important table to revise. Now, how to provide antenatal care to the women who have epilepsy? Antenatal care must be in a joint clinic where you should involve the obstetrician, midwives, and epilepsy care team must also be involved in the care of the women. Anomaly scan is a very important part of epileptic women care because we know that there is a high risk of having anomalies even if the woman is not taking any drugs. So anomaly scan is important. It will be done at the routine time, 18 to 21 weeks. Okay, so there is the different thing because epilepsy is associated with small for gestational age baby. So we have to do the serial scans, which will start from 28 weeks to rule out and to look for SGA. So that is a different point than the routine antenatal care in epilepsy. Odds ratio of having anomaly is 3 times higher in WWE women with epilepsy and taking anti-epileptic drugs versus those women who do not take anti-epileptic drugs. So anti-epileptic drugs are associated with higher odds of anomalies. Lamotrigine is a very, I would say, interesting drug because this makes its part somewhere in the contraception with the combined oral contraception. Then it has some role and some uh, tricky part in the epilepsy also. Remember, lamotrigine levels fall up to 70% during the pregnancy. So when the levels fall, the chance of having epileptic seizures increases. So what you have to do is you should gradually increase the dose of lamotrigine during the pregnancy. That is one reason I said in the previous question, if you have a choice to do between the carbamazepine and lamotrigine, you would choose carbamazepine because lamotrigine has these things to do, even though it is associated with relatively lesser risks to the of the anomalies to the baby, but its level falls down. So there is more chance that the woman may have fits. However, RCOG Green Top guideline does not recommend any routine drug monitoring during the pregnancy. Now, we know we have to know about the enzyme inducing drugs and enzyme inhibiting drugs, P450 system enzymes. In the contraception section, I had made one table which was very clear about those drugs which are enzyme inducers and which are enzyme inhibitors. So again, in the epilepsy, we should know which of the drugs are enzyme inducing drugs. Now you can see here, sodium valproate is not present in this list. Lamotrigine is also not here. Remember these names, they are given in the Green Top guideline and they do ask this question in the exam, twisting in one way or another, because they want to know the anti-epileptic, they want to make sure that you know what are the anti-epileptic drugs used in pregnancy, whether they are enzyme inducing or inhibitors, and what are its effects on the mother. The drugs which are mentioned in the guideline are carbamazepine, phenytoin, phenobarbital, oxcarbazepine, topiramate, and eslicarbazepine. Vitamin K 1 milligram IM should be given to all the babies born to WWE. Now in next slide, we will see what are the risks of epilepsy in pregnancy and if woman is taking medicines or not. If a woman, and if you compare, and this is given in the guideline with all the numbers, all the evidences and a lot of studies, I have just extracted what is needed for you to remember. If a woman is taking monotherapy versus polytherapy, increased cesarean section risk with polytherapy. If a woman is taking anti-epileptic drugs or not taking versus no anti-epileptic drugs, if and it has no effect, it doesn't make a difference if the woman is taking the drugs or not taking the drugs on the incidence and the rates of hypertension, cesarean section, antepartum hemorrhage, preterm labor, miscarriage. But if anti-epileptic drugs are taken, there are increased chances of induction of labor, growth restriction, NICU admissions, and PPH. As compared to the woman who are normal, and those women who have epilepsy. There is no effect, and they are not taking any medicines. Here you can see there is no medicines. The normal woman and woman with epilepsy. There is no difference in GDM and perinatal death. But women who are epileptic, regardless of whether they are taking the drugs or not, one drug or poly drugs they are taking, there is increased risk of cesarean section, miscarriage, induction of labor, preterm labor, APH and PPH. The next slide, this one is the most important slide for this guideline. Risk of fit during the labor incidence 3.5%. There is a 3.5% chance of having a fit during labor. Status epilepticus is 1%. Very important numbers. This is highlighted. Probably it's a recall. That is why I've highlighted it. Tonic-clonic fits are around 1 to 2%, and 1 to 2% fits occur within the 24 hours postpartum period. Please remember, postpartum period is one of a very high risk period, and that is one reason why they have a full-fledged separate module for postpartum period, because most of the conditions which we are covering here in the maternal medicine module, they are prevalent and they continue in the postpartum period, and women are still at high risk of having those conditions. Okay, can any of you tell me, Tabassum, I'm asking you this question. What are the drugs which we use to control the fits in epilepsy?
Benzodiazepines.
Very good.
Actually, I read epilepsy, so I can't tell you.
No, very good. If you have read it, I'm very happy. Please give your input.
Note, so I just went through that one topic. Lorazepam 0.1 milligram per kg, and
Excellent.
then diazepam, and then diazepam we give IV. If it is not possible, then we can give Vectal.
Mm-hmm.
And also there is a prophylactic clobazam.
This is the one. Thank you. This is the one I wanted to hear. Clobazam. This is the drug. This is the drug, and this is one of the recall questions, please. Because we say benzodiazepines are the drug of choice to terminate the fit. But if you want to give a woman a drug which would help her prevent having the fits, that is clobazam. And for which woman we will give if she has history of fit in the last labor. There is recent fits history, recent provoked fits because of sleep deprivation or due to stress. So please remember this drug, clobazam. This came in the February 2020 exam question. It's a recall question. It was a new question in that exam. And we know if a woman has fit, the management is A, B, C. Don't forget, management of any emergency situation, whether it's an obstetrical emergency, whether it's a gynecological emergency or any emergency, your approach should be A, B, C. You have to stabilize the woman first and then manage the condition. Stabilization is very important. Now, what Dr. Tabassum was saying, and very rightly so, when you have a woman who has fit, you will first do the airway breathing and circulation, ensure that is there. Then you are going to see what is the drug and how you are going to terminate the fits. The next step you will do is to see if the woman has IV access. You will give her lorazepam 0.1 milligram per kg or diazepam 5 to 10 milligram IV slowly. So this is the one if a woman has IV access. Now you imagine if a woman is having fits, she does not have IV access. You can't take the efforts to try to save her IV line. It would be very difficult. So what to do in that situation? Patient does not have any IV access. You'll give diazepam 10 to 20 milligram rectally per rectum, and it will be repeated once every 15 minutes. Or another option is midazolam 10 milligrams given through the buccal route. Now, after doing these drugs, using these drugs, fits are still not controlled. Then you will consider giving phenytoin or fosphenytoin. So as you can see, this is the slide which covers the management of the epilepsy, and probably 4 or 5 recall questions. Seizures in the labor, status epilepticus in the labor, use of clobazepam, best drug to terminate fit, best drug for prophylaxis of fits. If the woman has IV access, which drug to give? Even if the woman does not have IV access, which drug to give? First line treatments or the fits are not controlled with these drugs, what to do next? Okay, let's move on to the next one. How do we do the labor and delivery? As this is a high risk pregnancy, so she should deliver in a consultant led unit, must have continuous electronic fetal monitoring. Induction of labor can be done, any type can be done. No contraindication for any drug in induction of labor. Mode of delivery depends on obstetrical factors. She can have a normal delivery. She may have to go for cesarean section due to the obstetrical reasons. Be very cautious if the woman wants to go for the water birth. There are many questions you may come across. A woman comes to you, she has epilepsy. She wants to discuss her birth plan. She wants to have water birth. So you have to tell her that she should have caution, because what can happen? Can any of you tell me, if a woman who is epileptic opts for water birth, what can happen?
Have aspiration and obstruction.
Yeah. She may have aspiration. She may drown. She may, if she has, what if she has fits and she is unsupervised? So you can't leave this woman unsupervised, because if she has fits, then it will be very difficult, right? Analgesia. For analgesia with epilepsy, you should be cautious of giving pethidine. Now, analgesia choice is pethidine. Be very cautious. Diamorphine would be a recommended one for the woman with epilepsy. If giving general anesthesia, avoid pethidine, ketamine, and sevoflurane. So anesthesia choice for the women with epilepsy is also some point to be noted, and they may ask a question, because pethidine is not going to be your choice. Now, what to do in the postpartum period? Postpartum period is also important, how to manage it. Be careful that up to the 3 days postpartum is the dangerous period for fits. You must counsel the woman. She should be careful. She should know that she is at high risk of having fits. She may need help for the child care. She may need assistance. She may need someone to be with her all the time. So that is the challenge of women who have epilepsy and who plan to have babies. When do we review the drugs? This is a recall question. You review the drugs of epilepsy after the 10 days after the delivery. Very simple question, very simple fact. After 10 days, you are going to review the drugs. Which is the best contraception for epileptic? The best is Depo-Provera. We studied it, we learned it during our contraception session. The DMPA is the best one for epileptic women. Encourage the women for breastfeeding. And we know that there may be some reservations for the breastfeeding for these women because of the risk of transfer of drugs in the breast milk. So what are the drugs which has the maximum transfer? Lamotrigine, levetiracetamine, and topiramate. And the minimum transfer is sodium valproate, carbamazepine, and phenytoin. So during the breastfeeding, you have to review the medicines, change the medicines, and try to give those medicines which have the least transfer in the breast milk. Then care for the child. Be careful. You have to be cautious. These women need extra support. So they need good counseling. So this is all about the GTG 68 of epilepsy in pregnancy. Now I have 3 EMQs. Now let's begin. Mm, Nuzat.
A woman taking epileptic medicine attend for the protein fetal anomaly scan at 20 weeks of gestation. The fetus is found to have spina bifida and cleft palate. Which medication is most likely to be taken? This is right. Sodium valproate. Carbamazepine.
You think it's carbamazepine, which is associated with spina bifida and cleft lip?
First, she told the right thing.
Sodium valproate or
Yeah, she told that first.
sodium valproate is the most likely.
Sodium valproate is the most likely. I should have added hypospadiasis here actually. So you would have been it would have been very easy for you. No problem. Good, good. Right. Tabassum, please try this question.
A pregnant woman attends antenatal clinic and is taking a single anti-epileptic drug. She has been informed that the drug she is taking has two main advantages. It carries the lowest risk of congenital malformations. It does not increase the risk of hemolytic disease of the newborn. Which drug is she most likely to be taking? Lamotrigine.
How did you reach the answer? Answer is right. How did you reach the answer?
Actually, lamotrigine has the least congenital malformation. Like I think it's 2%. And sodium valproate, you said 8%. I think from the TOG also I had read. So I think sodium valproate they give 10, and lamotrigine is given as 2%. There is a table in TOG.
What about carbamazepine here? Your answer is right. That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, carbamazepine also, according to what you said, it has the least congenital malformations.
Yeah, but it does not. It increases the risk of hemolytic disease of the newborn.
Okay.
Carbamazepine. That is how you reach the answer of lamotrigine. It's there in the explanation. You can read it. Okay. So lamotrigine is the drug which. So two drugs I told you to remember. Lamotrigine and carbamazepine. They are the two drugs which are associated with the least or the lowest risk of congenital malformations. Okay. For lamotrigine, I told you what are its limitations, that drug uh, percentage reduces during the pregnancy and you have to increase the dose and all those things. but the lamotrigine is the one which will not increase the risk of hemolytic disease. So that is the main difference between the carbamazepine and lamotrigine. So if you get a question like this, you have the two choices, narrow down the two choices between carbamazepine and lamotrigine. Very good answer. Okay, Zebunisa, please this question.
A woman with epilepsy has a seizure in labor. Benzodiazepine are administered, but the seizures continue. Which second-line therapy should now be administered? Sodium valproate.
Hmm? It's okay. Read the question again. It's fine. No problem. The slide which I said is the most important one, where we discussed about the drugs of to control the seizure. Okay, clobazam prophylactically, benzodiazepines to control the fits in labor, and the drugs when you have the IV access and when you don't have the IV access. Okay, and then I said that if the fits are not controlled with these first line drugs, you will move on to, can any of you tell me that? What is the answer
Phenytoin?
for?
Anytime.
Exactly. Okay, Zebunisa, I hope now you will not forget. Please don't jump onto sodium valproate. We say don't give sodium valproate because we want to try. Now the fit has happened during labor. Okay, we have to control it. You're getting my point? Zeb, I'm asking you, please do let me know. Did you get my point? Okay, so the answer is I think maybe she's having some problem with the mic. The answer is phenytoin. So these are the answers. You can read the explanations. Now let's move on to our next topic.